right, welcome in here. Got plenty of NBA action here tonight. Two games, two-game twos in the second round of the NBA playoffs, and one should be interesting, the other less interesting. We'll figure out what is what here today as we welcome back in the pen. Ralph Michaels here today to join us, and straight off his vacation in Hawaii, it'll be double R1L, Steve Merril. Coming back, took a nice little Alaskan cruise. I think you stopped in Montreal, then you flew to Hawaii. So just saying, it's a pleasure to get you back here, Merril. It's been a hot minute. Shocker here. Shout out to the chat room, by the way. Instagram in the house, YouTube Shorts, as well as YouTube, Facebook, and X. And before we dive into game one here tonight, guys, Boston taking on, it doesn't really matter what their name is. They're losing in 4 anyway. But we do have some unfinished business from yesterday's show here, by the way, as we shout out Tyler and Have, and Bill is in the house. Now, listen, on this show, we have always said that we have the smartest viewers. And those of you guys in the chat room, that you guys are just on top of it like none other. So, in honor of that, we put a little clip together in honor of, well, you'll see it here in a sec. Go ahead, Dan, play that up for us. Obi's props are here tonight because John Finley loves Obi Toppin here tonight, and player props for points. 9.5 is his point prop there. John Finley jumping in. Over 9.5 points with Obi. Oh, there you go. John Finley, very nice yesterday. Threatened all of us if we didn't play Obi Toppin over 9.5. Said he'd be willing to not show up ever again if Obi Toppin didn't get over 9.5. So he did it. Congratulations. In fact, Titan CT, Have was on there. You guys were all over it. First half, Indiana. Team totals over. We were all pretty spot on what was happening yesterday in that game against the Knicks. Now the question is, can we do it tonight with the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics? Game 2 tonight here at the TD Garden here. So let us dive into this Cleveland Cavs tier here, Ralph. 13.5, 213, 213.5 for a total. Ralph Michaels, what does the pen say about the Cavs' chance of pulling this one off here tonight?
Well, I think pretty much 0, Joe, especially with Allen likely not playing again. He, you keep reading the Cleveland papers and, he's so close, but he didn't even participate in the shoot around this morning. So that questionable looks even a little bit worse for him. But, I had to go to the database and on one of our shows, Joe, we talked about the zigzag theory and how popular it was in the early 2000s. Well, let me tell you this. Not only does the zigzag not work, when I went back to the database since 2015, when you looked at a team that won game 1 as a home favorite, and in game 2, they're a home favorite, those teams are 60-15, 80% against the spread, and FYI, they're 66.7% ATS. When you take those teams are a favorite now of -2 or higher, it turns out to be 69% against the spread. So don't fall into that trap. I went to the database and looked at how teams do if they were a 10-point favorite and they won, and now they're a double-digit favorite again. Those have been pretty equal. Those are only 9-7 against the spread, 56.2%. And this surprised me. They're only 11-5 straight up. So you look at a team that's a double-digit dog. 5 of the 16 times the team has been a double-digit dog in the second of back-to-back games, they've actually pulled the upset 5 of 16 times. But I also look at the situation. Celtics just playing too strong offensively, too strong defensively. The Cavs have no one else to score except Mitchell. And if they stop Mitchell, the Cavs are dead in the water. We saw how poorly they shot in game 1 in that 25-point loss. Again, I mentioned Allen being gone in the middle is a huge loss. I think he's missed his 5th straight game. And Cleveland, now you could say this, it has to be better from the 3-point line than it was last game, shooting 11 of 42. That's 26.2%. Boston, by the way, 39.1%. And Boston shot 86% from 3. I did not get to the window tonight in either game. But I still think the Cavs can hang around this number. And I think Boston, the way they won easy in game 1, I think they tend now, knowing that Allen is likely out again. You just rest on your laurels a little bit more. We'll see what happens. Celtics win the game. If I had to pick a side to bet, I would grab the points with the Cavs, despite even missing Allen. If Allen were in it, I'd be looking at the Cavs as a selection much more deeply.
And that's the big question mark here, right? Now, first of all, Allen, what is he even going to bring to the table? He's a rim protector. How the hell is that going to prevent Boston from dropping 43s on him? I'm not quite sure. Plus, he's got the rib problem. So this is just an absolute nightmare of a matchup for the Cavs. Garland has been MIA, absolutely nowhere to be found here. I guess maybe you just gotta hope they sit everyone again, right? With about 5 minutes into the fourth quarter. I don't know what else to think we're gonna get here besides an absolute waxing here. It's Mitchell or not for the Cavs. I guess maybe that's how their approach is.
Well, or Cleveland can do what your Miami Heat did and hit a franchise-high amount of three-pointers in Game 2 to barely win by 10. So that's what it's going to take, and it's not likely. But winning the game straight up and covering as a 13.5-point dog are two totally different things. And I do like Cleveland to cover in this game. If I had to play the side, I'm on Cleveland plus 13.5. It does, history doesn't always repeat, but it rhymes. We always say that. And let's look at last year. Boston, they lost that Eastern Conference Final to Miami. They lost 3 of the 4 home games. They did better on the road. In the last series against Miami, they won 2 of the 3 at home. But once again, they've been vulnerable at home the last couple of years in the playoffs. And they are the best team in the NBA. They're the deepest team in the NBA. Most well-balanced offense and defensively strength as far as the teams go. But it comes down to if they take their foot off the gas or not. And they have shown a tendency to do it. And if there's ever a time you think it might happen, just like in Game 2 of the last series, it's going to be Game 2 as a big favorite after an easy win in Game 1. If Boston rolls here, then perhaps they take their foot off in Game 3 and maybe Cleveland sneaks in at home. But I'd rather take my chances catching double digits here versus a single-digit line in Game 3. So I think if you're going to take a spot for Cleveland to cover, this is by far their best chance in the series. And I think they probably do cover at least once in this series. It's very difficult to have a perfect 4-0 sweep, let alone a 4-0 point spread sweep when you're laying double digits on top of that. So Cleveland's worth a look here. I'm with Ralph. I think Allen being out has hurt this team. They're not as strong. But just using the overall games this season, you would have about a 9 to 10 point neutral court edge for Boston. Yes, maybe home court is worth 3 points here, but the line's a point higher, 1 to 2 points higher than it was in Game 1, depending on the opener or the close. Yet the situation is probably better for Cleveland now. So that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and I think there is some line value now with the Cavs.
So you're thinking it's interesting. A couple of questions here. We're going to get to some of the props in this game as well in just a minute. Plus, we'll talk Dallas OKC coming up. Those of you just joining us here, welcome in. The total seems to be real interesting in this game because it seems like we've got the line in the sand. We've got half the room loving the under in some fashion with Cleveland, and then the other half of the room is saying if it wasn't for everyone, brick house happening with Cleveland at the end of that game with all the scrubs, there's absolutely no way that game stays even remotely close to an under there. I mean, and I don't think you're going to need Boston to have to do, 120 or more points here, Ralph. If you're thinking the over, well, Boston's certainly going to get theirs. I guess the only question you have to have is whether or not you think Cleveland is going to contribute enough.
Well, Cleveland feels like they're going to play better offensively. I mean, there's a lot of quotes out of the camp. Just FYI, I did go to the database, excluding round 1, where we've seen some big favorites. The largest, there's only been 3 favorites since 2006, higher than 13.5 points in rounds 2, 3, or 4. The Bulls against the Heat in 2013, the Celtics against the Cavs in 2017, and the Celtics against the Cavs in 2017 again. They were in back-to-back games. So huge lines in the playoffs outside of round 1. The dogs of 12.5 or more have gone 1-8 straight up, 5-4 ATS, and 6-3 against the spread. You know, I did pull something from the database today, Joe, and when you look at series game 2 of the playoffs, if the home favorite won game 1, round 2 has gone over 59.5% since 2006. Round 3 has gone over 54.5%. And in the finals, game number 2 has gone over 64.3%. So that is over 60% blindly playing game number 2 over the total if that team won game 1 as a home favorite. So something to think about. Perhaps there is a slight letdown when the team wins that first game. They know they're playing back at home. The visitors now have time to regroup. They stayed at a hotel. They had an off day between the games, and they come and play a little more focused and get their offensive game in gear. So not enough for me to get to the window with that. If I had to play the total, I would lean over.
Well, if we're going to play a total then, Merril, it sounds like maybe the team total for the Cavs, which is hovering around 98.5, 99, it's still under 100. And people who will say absolutely not, that they've only, I think over the last year, including last year's playoff run, I think they've only gone over 100 points 3 times. But at 98.5, 99.5, it's got to be team total over, game over for Cleveland. Would you think that's a good way to correlate it?
Well, in general, they're a pretty slow team, defensive team. So that's the kind of the contrarian angle there. But I will say this, they played 3 times in the regular season. They got to 113, 107, and 105 each time, which easily got over this total. And then on top of that, you know, part of the handicap here liking Cleveland isn't that Cleveland's going to play great. It's that Boston's going to take their foot off the gas and be complacent. And I think that's part of the reason your Miami Heat hit a franchise record, 23 threes in game 2 last round. It's not because they were great shooting. It's because Boston also didn't guard them too well at times. So that would also favor a Cleveland team total over. So I would not disagree with that. I lean Cleveland plus the big number, and that probably correlates to the over. Maybe it correlates to a Boston under as well, but Boston is so dependent on the 3-point shot. It's always dicey trying to guess if they're going to hit them or not. By the way, they were 39% in game 1, won by 25, and they were plus 21 from 3. So you take out the 3-point margin, it was a 4-point game in game 1. So once again, 3-point shooting is going to dictate if Cleveland covers or not.
Yeah, only I'm more confident with Miami hitting 45 threes than I am Cleveland at this point. But your boy Garland,
I would agree.
Your boy Garland, better. It can't just be Donovan Mitchell, Merril. Somebody else has got to show up. So, another correlation. If I think Cleveland's going to get over or at least 100 points, if I think they're going to stay within 13.5, who else besides Mitchell then? There's got to be somebody else showing up here tonight. Would you bank on Garland, Merril? Is that the guy you would look to have a big night?
Yeah, somebody's been watching my daily video, perhaps even editing my daily video, because I do believe I mentioned Garland in that, if I recall. It's been a while since I recorded it. But yeah, I think he's the guy that could step up, because obviously Mitchell has to do it again. And you're concerned that Mitchell was 33 points in and they still lost by 25. That's a concern. But as I've said with the Knicks, with all these teams, Edwards for the T-Wolves, Mitchell for the Cavs, it's over or pass for me on these superstars. I'm not looking to fade the superstars. I'm not trying to guess when they're going to have an off night. I'm not going to try to guess when Brunson misses the entire second quarter and still ends up with 29 points and snaps his 40-plus game streak of 4 straight games. So it's Mitchell or over or pass. If I think the Cavs have a chance tonight, he's going to have a big game. But what I do like to do, like you said, is look for other guys a little bit under the radar. And I think Garland qualifies for a couple reasons. He was only 6 for 15. He was only 2 for 8 from 3-point range. And he still got to 14 points, and his total was only 16.5. He couldn't shoot much worse, and he still almost got over. And now his total is around 15.5 in some spots. This is a guy that had 14, 21, 23, and 14 in 4 of his last 5. He's gotten very close to it. So, yes, if the Cavs play better, which I think they will, Garland's going to probably be a likely candidate to help them.
That's got to be somebody other than Mitchell here. We got a couple of questions in the chat room, Merril. John Denon from YouTube Shorts there wants to know what's the kind of cutoff line. He wants to know if the line were -10, would you then take the Celtics? How confident is you're staying within the number? What number would you have to get to, let's say, in game, if the Celtics got down to what, -6, -7? What are you thinking?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And it's a great question by John, too, because I've always said, everyone's like, who do you like? I was like, well, it depends what the line is. If either team was plus 50 here, I'm on them. If either team is -50, I'm fading them. And that's an extreme example. But whenever handicap in any sport, you have to start with, in my opinion, a preferred situational side. And I think the situation favors Cleveland because Boston might come a little complacent here in this game. And then we look for line value on top of that. And as I said earlier, if you use the raw numbers this season, anywhere from 9 to 10 on a neutral court, so probably 12 to 13 is a fair line. So at 13.5, situation and a little bit of line value gets me on Cleveland. At -10, the line value would definitely be on the Celtics, but the situation still concerns me. Yes, I would lean Boston at that point, but it wouldn't be enough for me to make it the best bet all of a sudden. In-game is interesting because we do see these huge flows in the in-games. Obviously, Celtics are capable of turning it on at any point. And that could be, if they get down to that single-digit range, I do expect them to win this game. But then again, if Cleveland gets down by if they're in-game at +20, I don't see them getting blown out by 25 again. It's tough. The end game in this one probably isn't as good as it's going to be in some other playoff games.
Yeah, it's going to have to take a monster run, I think, by the Cavaliers to get this thing where it would be, can we look? They would have to be absolutely on fire from outside in order for, I think, what is it, the algorithm there of the books to try and get that thing down a little bit to where it would be manageable at -5, -6, or better than that. So, but anything is possible. But one thing I do know is possible. Elliot Jameson in the chat room yelling at the top of his lungs. I guess that's what caps are. Yelling at the top of his lungs about Derek White. And I could not agree with you more, my man, that his prop, 17.5 points is what I saw it this morning. You can probably get it in the alternate market at a pretty good price. The dude has dropped 25 points in 2 games, and I'm pretty sure 4 of the 6 playoff games that he has played, he's also dropped 20 or more points here. So I got no problem. I think that's a great look. Derek White over 17.5 points or more. The guy has been a machine. There's no Porzingis. He's getting the minutes. He's getting the attempts. This is, I think that is not a bad way to look there, Ralph. And quite honestly, we're talking about what the Cavs have to do, but Ralph, from the Boston side of it, it can't just be Tatum either, right? It's got to be Brown's got to show up. White's got to show up. The defense is going to be much better than what it was in the first game by the Cavs. In fact, Ralph, I know the database has probably shown that the Cavs, after getting blown out like that in a game, the next game tends to be a much better defensive effort for the Cavs and usually lands under. So Boston's got to have more than just Tatum here tonight.
Yeah, but you probably have. Again, I am not into player props, but I do watch the Cavs a lot. I'm going to say anytime you're playing the Cavs, you always look at the guards to go over, because between Mitchell and Garland, you may have the worst defensive combo in guards as there are in the NBA. I mean, they're all offense. They don't play defense. What saved them during the regular season was having Allen and Mobley back there, so the guards couldn't drive. Well, you take Allen out of the situation, that puts a Coro in there, and you have to play Yang more, so the guards can now drive, which again is something that they weren't able to do in the regular season. Just FYI, guys, we were talking about the live betting. This situation's rare, doesn't know if it'll happen, but I just wanted to throw this out for our viewers just so they have an idea if they're watching tonight. In the playoffs, if a team is a double-digit favorite and is trailing after the first quarter, they have actually only won the game 72.1% of the time and covered the game 33% of the time. So, yes, they are still winning by an average of, I have to do the math in my head, 6.4 points per game. So keep that in mind. If you have double-digit favorites and they're trailing after the first quarter and you're thinking this is a great opportunity to bet live, the average win margin is 6.4 points per game for that double-digit favorite.
Yeah, it's we've seen it certainly enough where bounce back efforts, especially defensively from teams that got blown out, especially this Cavs team here. They are never going to be less than a double-digit favorite ever playing in Boston. I don't care when it is. So they got their work cut out here tonight, no doubt about it. But some of these games, and it's important because I think Ralph and Steve have alluded to it, wait till the game go. I mean, live betting is, there's a lot of great angles and edges to be had waiting to see how the game comes out here first before having to make a decision pre-flop. So that's a good point, Ralph. And you know what? If the edge doesn't show up or if the opportunity doesn't show up, don't bet it. It's that simple. You're not looking to bet just to bet anyway across the board there. Big shout out. By the way, Eric is lost. He might be day drinking, Dan. Eric is in the now Instagram chat. I think he might. That's where most of the day drinkers go, is they hang out on Instagram. Poor Eric is lost in Instagram. We're trying to get him back to the YouTube crew here, into the loving arms of Elliot and Tyler and Big Daddy and all of them. So shout out to Kelsey, by the way, showing up in shorts, as well as Tom Brazy 12. That's a hell of a lot of letters here, dude. But good to see you. Says Brown needs to show up. White needs to show up. And even yellow needs to show up. So well done, by the way. Outstanding with that comment. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up.
You know what?
Go ahead.
You know, when you were talking about the live betting and talking about the day drinking?
Yes.
Wouldn't it be great to have a breathalyzer on your app during live betting that you have to pass the breathalyzer that you're not live betting stupidly?
That has about a less than zero chance of ever happening because how else are the books going to make money except for us drunks who end up just speed betting as fast as we can in game. So that's a good idea, Ralph. We need it as the public needs it for sure, but the books would definitely lobby against that there. All right, so we've got a couple more questions in here. Let me just make sure that we've got their shout out to Finley. All right, I think we've covered this game here, so I think we're good to go for the Celtics and the Cavs. Anybody else have any other questions, comments, props? Drop them in there. Breaking news, if you guys didn't see it, they just fired Frank Vogel. He is out as head coach of the Phoenix Suns after getting his ass handed to him by the Minnesota Timberwolves. So a sweep will cause all sorts of crazy things to happen there. Phoenix, moving on from Frank Vogel. He is the latest fired. What do they call it? They call it like Black Monday in the NFL. I'm shocked it kind of took him this long to actually can him. I thought it was going to happen shortly after the dismal effort there, Merril.
And he's been a head coach in 4 spots now, and he'll be a head coach in a 5th spot within the next couple of years. That's just how this stuff works. It always amazes me that the inner circle carousel that the NBA and the NFL and all these other sports are. I mean, it's like you keep, chasing your tail and hoping for a different result. I mean, find someone different. That was a vast underachievement with the Suns this year, in my opinion.
Yes, I agree, but there are changes coming to that franchise. Childhood Greats, by the way, says loves speed betting in a game. Absolutely. Glass of bourbon in one hand, your thumb all lubed up, ready to go in the other, and you're off and running, betting away here, guys. All right, let's do this. FanDuel doesn't hate you, Elliot. They love you. I promise you. So does BetMGM as well as DraftKings and others. Let us dive into the late game here tonight. Of course, this will be Dallas taking on OKC. And big spot here for Dallas. Wasn't a great showing in game one at all, but OKC continues to dominate, certainly at home here. 4.5 now, I think. And if I'm not mistaken, first game closed 2.5, Ralph, I believe. And now this one, it was 5, so there seems to be a little bit of buyback, 5 and 4.5. 218 is the total in this one, which is also interesting. But the big question is the Mavericks. Are they going to have a better shooting game? Can they counter what SGA and OKC did in this game? I mean, the number feels right, Ralph, but is there any value in this game one way or the other for you?
Well, one thing to remember in both the previous game that we talked about, Boston and Cleveland, and this game, Dallas and OKC, is that we had one rested team off an easy series win against an opponent that went the wire. And I did an NBA TNA video with my son, and he brought up some angles. Teams off a game 7 are horrific, like the Cavs were, because you off that physical battle against Orlando. Then you're facing a higher seed on the road against a rested Boston team. Now, Dallas didn't get to game 7. They took care of the Clippers in game 6. But that was clearly, a situation where they lose the opener, they win the next 2, they lose game 3, they win, and then they win the next 2. I like OKC here, and I like OKC in the first half. I mentioned earlier about teams that win game 1 as a home favorite, how they come back in game 2. You look at what Dort did. I mean, Joe, I joked with you before we came on. Dort stops Doncic again today, and he may be the MVP after 2 games. Doncic 6 of 19, 1 of 8 from threes. Now, again, remember he was banged up, and Dort has some other responsibilities, so he's not the sole defensive player on Doncic. But OKC played about the perfect game. I mean, they only had 9 turnovers. They had a 52-39 rebounding edge. But when I look at the first half, the Thunder are a very strong first half team. In fact, they're number 3 in the NBA in first half points per game diff. Dallas is number 15. That is last. The only team worse that is a playoff team than Dallas at number 15 is the Pacers. Dallas also a poor free throw shooting team. So if they get into that situation later in the game, we'll see what happens. But Dallas doesn't have the problems that Cleveland has. I mean, with Kyrie and Doncic, they know they've got 2 people that can score. But I look at this OKC defense, and it just boggles my mind. Let's look at their last, again, against New Orleans. They allow 38%, 45%, 38%, 37%, and 39.3% against Dallas in that first game. So when you play 5 playoff games and you're allowing under 37%, you have a damn good defensive team. And you talk about the depth. They can run people they have multiple people that can cover those Doncic. And if they get in foul trouble, it's no concern to me. I don't trust Dallas off a loss. They've been a good team off a loss. But I do like OKC first half minus the 2.5 here. To take care of business, it'll be an exciting second half in my mind.
Merril, I mean, what do you think here? Because game 1, it opened Thunder 2.5. It was bet up to right around where it is now. Only it opened, 4.5, 5 in this game. So the market has adjusted from game 1's opening line to where we are now. Are you kind of shocked we don't have a ton of movement with the Thunder here at this point? Or you think there's any value in backing Dallas here to bounce back here in a game 2?
I think the bounce back spot is much better here, and there is value now. The line's higher. I had a strong best bet in game 1 on Tuesday for my clients at WagerTalk.com on Oklahoma City. Ralph mentioned Boston was in the spot too. In fact, I had a lot of situational angles that favored Boston. I just didn't want to lay the big number. I'm just not comfortable laying that double digits. I should have in hindsight, because as Ralph said, the rest versus rust argument is pretty clear. the extra time off does not hurt these number one seeds, especially. And both OKC and Boston rolled in that mode in game one on Tuesday. So I do think it favors both dogs to probably bounce back better here in game two. But I'm going to look at the total instead. And I gave this out on my video for free as well. In fact, it's my free play tonight. I got a free baseball game, by the way, tonight on Thursday, but also posted the total for free on my page at WagerTalk.com. And that's the over 218 in this game. Now, the reason it's not in the client best bet is a couple things. First of all, Dort is a great defensive presence. All the defensive numbers that Ralph mentioned are a huge concern. OKC is really getting it done. And the other concern I have is Doncic's knee. He is not healthy. He's playing through it, but he is not 100%. His shooting numbers are all you have to look at. He was 1 for 8 from 3 in game one. He is now 17 for 75, 22.5% for the playoffs from beyond the arc, less than 23% from 3. And I don't think that's a fluke. He was 1 for 8 in game one. I don't look for that getting better. I still lean over 218, though, because of the pace. And just looking at the regular season meetings are very telling as well. Total was 218 in game one. It landed 212. It stayed under, but it's misleading because it was a blowout. And, blowouts, you don't get many fouls down the stretch. You get teams kind of just running the clock of the winning team. So it's not a true game. But even using the pace of that game, I rescored it around 230, which would have been well over the total had they shot their norm from the field. And Dallas shot only 39%. OKC only hit 45%. They shot below their norm as well. They were hot from 3, though. The other thing I'll point out is Dallas is only 68% from the free throw line, 34% from 3. So there is some upside from the Mavericks from a shooting perspective. So I think the over, maybe even a Dallas team total over, could be worth a look. The other thing I'll point out, too, I had a strong best bet in game one of the Knicks-Pacers series over the total, and that total was about 20-some points lower than the regular season. That's the same thing we've got here. The regular season matchups, 235, 239, 233, 226, and now we're seeing 218 again. So it's well below the norm of the regular season. And only once in the regular season in the 4 meetings did both Irvin and Doncic play together, and that was the second one in February. Dallas won that game 146-111, 257 points scored in regulation. So I do lean over 218. Just wish that Doncic was a bit more healthy. Another game, maybe you wait until an end game to see how he's moving. If he hits a couple shots early, maybe you're more confident to have the Mavs and the over at that point.
S. Warrior in the house. Right on time again, S. Warrior. Outstanding. You're only 50 minutes late here today, but always a pleasure to see you here. We do have
He's
some
early
questions.
for next season.
He's very early for the Heat season, Nick. Don't worry. He's waiting for the announcement that once Donovan Mitchell loses, that he's on his way to Miami. He's going to look great in that Heat uniform. We do have some questions. And, Ralph, you mentioned OKC certainly good early in some of these games here. Has your opinion changed on the series at all here, Ralph, with OKC? They win tonight, go up 2-0. Your thoughts on Dallas going back home 2-0 here? They can ill afford, obviously, anything worse happening to Doncic. We get that. But is this a 5-6 game series, or do you think this has got the potential of maybe eventually getting back to a zigzag situation?
I will, depending on how Dallas looks. I mean, we all know the O2, you're paying the premium price for those O2 teams returning home. And that's another situation that hasn't trended like it had in the past. But, I still think I don't trust OKC, no matter what their numbers say. They're still young, and going on the road against a Dallas team is totally different than going on the road like they did against the Pelicans without Zion playing both of those games. They are going on the road when they go on the road with 2 superstars. So, it took me forever, Joe. You had to hit me on the head with a rowing oar, because it took me forever to buy into the Thunder this year. I just kept saying, they're too young. They're just going through a fluky stretch. And, and that happens. It doesn't matter how long you're handicapping. If you're not close enough to a team and watching enough game live, you just sometimes can't appreciate how there are young teams nowadays. And let's remember, so much in basketball has changed, from the LeBron days when rookies rarely played and you hardly had these kids coming out, how these kids play in Europe starting from the age 13 and 14, and how they play AAU teams. And what they do with all these trading, young kids now are so much more prepared to play in the NBA than they were years ago. So that's just something I have to grow accustomed to. But I still think Dallas is live in this series. I am not going to write them off. And just FYI, you guys were talking about those high totals in the playoffs.
Yes.
I did take a look, and when we have totals, what's tonight's total in this game? 218?
218, yep.
When I go back to 2000, this one actually surprises me. Playoff totals higher than 218 since 2014 are 52 and 66, 44% to the over, 56% to the under. So, Steve mentioned that they're significantly lower than the regular season. That, of course, for a reason, because guys actually play some defense in the playoffs sometimes, except if you're a Cavs guard and you're exempt. So no problem with that. I do, like I said, I like OKC the first half. I'm looking for a second half exciting game. I would lead over in this game, even though that stat I just gave you. And I still think Dallas is live, even if they go down 0-2.
It's interesting, Steve, looking at the series price market. It's a pick'em right now in the series spread here. OKC, a game and a half, minus 110. Dallas, plus a game and a half, minus 110 here. I still think 6 games is still 2-1. Even 5 games, 2-1, 7 games, 2-1. It certainly feels like everything we've just talked about is contingent upon the health of Doncic, including his prop here tonight. Merril, did you get a load of this number? Ralph and I were talking about this earlier in the before the show started. 50.5 is what he is laying PRA in this one here. And I'll tell you, he's averaging 28, 8, and 9. But he's only shooting 22% from 3, and he's hitting 39% from the floor. So while that number is a little jarring when you look at it here, the question of his health, isn't that an ultimate crapshoot? I mean, betting against Doncic being able to man up and hit better than 22% from 3, all of that just seems kind of crazy to me, doesn't it? Why are we betting against him without 100% knowing that he just can't do any better than what we've seen here in game 1?
I like his assist prop over. If you're going to break down that PRA, I like the assist prop over 9.5. I actually mentioned this in my standalone video, which I'm doing every day. Hit subscribe, hit the bell for an instant alert every morning. You get a complete breakdown of both NBA playoff games for the day. I like his assist over for a few reasons. First of all, I'm very worried about the knee, but he played over 40 minutes still. It's just the shooting percentage, as I said earlier, has been awful. 1 for 8 from threes, 23% for the playoffs. So you got to be careful with the points for that reason. Obviously, rebounding probably is not great with a hurt knee, but what do you do if you're not shooting well? You probably look to pass the ball more, especially when you have another superstar in Kyrie Irving. And one of the viewers for the video today, actually, and I love the viewer comments. I read them all. I reply back. Really do have the smartest, sharpest viewers here on WagerTalk TV. One of the viewers today in the video said that he had up to 20 possible assists in game 1. I thought that was an interesting stat, which I hadn't looked at. So if you had 20 possible assists and only got 9, I like my odds of getting over 9.5. And if you look a little bit deeper, even while injured here throughout the playoffs, he's been hovering around 9 or 10 every game. In fact, going back to the start of the Clippers, he had 6. But in each of the last 6 playoff games since, he has had 9 assists or more. Now, he's had 9 3 other times. That's a concern because it's 9.5. But he's had 9 or more in 6 straight, and he's injured. So I think he gets over the 9.5 assists. Definitely the best way to play Doncic, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I got to feel like to back it up, Merril, shouldn't we be looking at Kyrie? How are we not backing Kyrie over in all of his, right? Because if Doncic truly is going to continue to hit 23% from three-point range, there's going to come a point in each one of these games where Kyrie has got to lead. And I think Rick brings up a good question, is that will Luca, let Kyrie run the offense here? Because if he is that hurt, it's got to be all Kyrie, no?
I totally agree. My concern would be that he was 7 for 14 and 3 for 4 from three-point range in game 1. He still only got to 20. He couldn't shoot much better for 3 and only got there. But he had 30 the game before against the Clippers, 14 and then 40. He's kind of zigzag for the most part. Kyrie Irving would be the only Irving props over would be the only way I play points with him. But I do think the Luca assist prop is the better option. And then, of course, you kind of go a little bit deeper. You start looking for guys that maybe are getting shots but underachieved. Another guy I'll mention is Gafford, not a guy we talk a lot about. Daniel Gafford, just 5 for 12 shooting in game one, and he's still got 16 points, well over the 8.5. His total had been 7.5 or 8.5, and he's had 8, 13, and 16 the last three. Unfortunately, it's up to 10, 10.5 now. So they're pricing it about 20% higher, but for good reason, because Daniel Gafford's definitely someone that's getting more points and shots, maybe because Doncic isn't as confident.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some totals here in the game. And if you like, Ralph, and you mentioned it about the first half here with them, and let me just make sure that I have, because there were some questions about first half spread. There are some believing that 2.5 is a little low, as you mentioned. But what about the team total here in OKC in the first half? We're looking at 54.5 for Dallas, and we're looking at 57.5 for the OKC Thunder here. So if they continue at the pace that they do, right, they're not going to slow down, you don't think, OKC. So the chance of them hitting 60 points in the first half at home is probably pretty good. And I don't know if you have the database on how many times they've hit that 60 mark here, Ralph, in the first half of games. That would be an interesting number here, because it certainly seems feasible enough here in this spot, doesn't it?
Yeah, the funny thing is, when you look at regular season NBA totals, the first half is usually 48% or 50% of the full game. And Joe, right, remember last week on the show on Thursday, I told you in the playoffs, it's been consistent year in and year out that the first half scoring is higher than it is the second half scoring in the playoffs. So you're actually getting negative value playing the over, because the first half is more than the first half scoring is higher, but the first half totals are now higher. So they made the adjustment. I think if I played OKC, I think I would prefer the full game in this matter, because I think if Dallas gets back, OKC is a decent free throw shooting team, and you get in that situation of a team being 0-2 like Dallas, having the foul. When you go to Steve, I will see if I can run how many times they top 60 points in the first half, Joe, in the database. It's nothing that's easy to get to, but I'll try to finagle it while you're talking to Steve.
No, that's fine here. By the way, Gafford, what we say, 18.5 points and rebounds is the number I am seeing here in the chat as well. Kyrie, 23.5 total points here. And what about OKC, Merril? If we're looking at props here, and we're looking at an over, let's say, in the full game here, and obviously if OKC is going to win, they're going to cover in this spot. There's going to be some dudes with a big night. And you have looked at Chet in a couple of games earlier in the playoffs here. Who in OKC would you focus on here tonight?
Yeah, the big three. There's a big three for OKC. Dort's a real defensive presence. He was just 2 for 9 shooting. Normally I'd look for a guy to make more shots, but he's the defensive guy, so I'm hesitant to play him over, because I just don't think that's going to be his focus for the team. Holmgren, SGA, obviously the two big guys, but the third guy who gets overlooked is Jalen Williams. And Williams had 18 points in game one and didn't even shoot well. He was only 6 for 15 from the field and still managed 18 points, which I think is a good sign going forward here, that he gets up and over 20.5. Fell short in game one, but once again was only 6 for 15 shooting and still was just a basket away. He's had 21 or more in each of the previous 3 games. In fact, he's had 19 or more in the previous 4 games, 21 or more in 3 straight until just 18, although he took a lot of shots. So I like Jalen Williams up and over 20.5 points in game 2 tonight.
I love some dude in the chat room who calls himself Ed the God just used a shit emoji, and we're supposed to take him seriously. Let's see, Ralph, did you come up with anything in this so far this year for OKC? 111.5, by the way, is the first half total. I think Dallas has to come out firing here tonight, and I don't think they want to find themselves 20 points down again. I do think if you think Dallas is going to keep this thing competitive, then we are absolutely getting over 111.5. Ralph, what are you thinking?
Joe, 44 home games for OKC this year. 30 of them have been over 57 points, so 58 points or more. So a very fair number. When OKC does score, obviously, if you score 58 points in the first half, you're playing well. When they've scored 58 points or more in the first half, they've gone 27-3 straight up, 26-4 against the spread. So when they have that lead at halftime, they haven't faltered too often, and they've held on to it in the second half. FYI, in those games, they've averaged, I have to do the math while I'm talking to you, they've averaged 60.3 points in the first half. They've actually averaged 60.7 points in the second half. So when they have that high scoring first half, they actually do better in the second half during their season so far this year.
All right, we got a few questions coming in here from the chat. Team, just to go back, we'll run them through any particular order in here. How about, I guess, X Russell TV wants to know Celtics team total over Merril. Is that something you would look at? Let's just make sure we have the correct. Let's make sure we got the correct number here. Team total for the Celtics, 112.5 here, Stephen. It is juiced to the over, so that's where the money is coming in on for sure.
Yeah, I lean Cleveland as far as the point spread goes. So if I think Cleveland's going to cover, I'd probably lean Boston team total under. But I think the best team total would be correlated to Cleveland team total overs. I mentioned they got well over 100 in the 3 regular season meetings. They were in a terrible spot with the limited rest off the Game 7 and Game 1, and they still got to 95. So I think Cleveland team total over the 100's the safest play as far as the team total.
So if you're going to look for team totals, Cleveland would be the way to look there. Also, Ralph, let me ask you, because I asked him, you and I were talking about the prop for Luca, and you mentioned there were a couple of 50-plus PRA props. One of them was Luca, and, of course, the other is the Joker, the MVP. But don't tell anybody there, because that's apparently a big shock. But what are you thinking about Luca here? If healthy, is this number an issue for you here tonight? If he plays tonight, is the OKC defense just to the level where you're like, even if he is healthy, I don't trust him to go over 50.5 here at this point tonight?
I agree with what Steve said earlier about his assists. So I think if you like Luca under, I would go under the points. And like I said, I watched Dort and I was amazed. I love watching people play defense. So what he did, and I think he has the complete confidence of his team and supporting him. The problem is this: Dort is so good. There's times he might cover Kyrie. When Dort was on Luca in Game 1, Luca could only manage 3 shots. He was 1 of 3. That's the type of defense he was playing. So no, with Dort on him, I am not playing Luca over. Happy trails to that. And there's only 2, I think, that were in the 40s, Joe. Alexander was like 47, and Donovan Mitchell was in the low 40s. So there's only 4 playoff players that were over 40 PRA, the 2 over 50, and then Mitchell and Alexander.
Yeah, and it's the big question is full game total, Merril, here in this Dallas and OKC game. 15 missed foul shots but in that game, in Game 1. All the starters were pulled with about 4 minutes or 5 minutes left in that game. The pace was there. The shot taking was there. Any reason why this thing shouldn't get over 218, especially since 117, 126, 111, and 126 is what OKC has scored against Dallas this year.
Yeah, and both teams like an up-tempo style. It's something I forgot to mention earlier when I was saying I lean over 218, and I used it as my free play on my page at WagerTalk.com. You can see the analysis there. Not only is this about 20 points lower than the regular season over-unders, but both teams are in the up top 10 as far as offensive ratings, pace, possessions, I think it all adds up to an over. And once again, game one was a misleading under just because it was a blowout. So I think this game is more likely to go over. My concern would be Dort shutting down Doncic or Doncic shooting just being god awful again. But even with 1 for 8 from 3-point range, they still got to 212. So anything around the norm for Dallas tonight will push this one over the total.
Yeah, would get up, and away here. Jaylen Brown, Alejandro in the house. Jaylen Brown over 25.5 points. What do you think about that? And what do you also think about Mobley here? Have we heard if Allen is going? Anybody? Is anybody here if Jared Allen's going? Is he still listed as questionable, Ralph? Are you seeing?
He is listed as questionable, but I just saw on X that he did not participate in the shoot around this morning. So,
yeah,
I would have to lean on the negative side. So, as you said, it's a rib contusion. And as far as the player prop, they said, listen, if you say you're playing against any Cleveland guard on an opposing guard's prop, I'm never going to stop you because I would only play over. That's granted they're not all going to win, but it's the only way I would look in that situation.
Yeah, what does it mean for Mobley, Steve? Because we got a whole lot of questions here. Mobley rebounds, Mobley points. Is it going to matter against the Boston defenders? It feels like he could very well have himself a pretty good game, or will have to if they're going to keep this thing close.
Yeah, just like Ralph said about, Cleveland not stopping the opposing guards. I think Boston's weakness is down low, and Porzingis, one of their bigger players, is out as well. So that definitely, and then Allen isn't in there, the other big man for Cleveland, it looks like. So I think that's very bullish for Evan Mobley props, whether it's points, rebounds. He's going to get more rebounds down low against a team like Boston. Points scored as well. He had 17 points, went over the 14.5 in game one. Now it's 13.5. I don't quite understand how it's lower. That doesn't make much sense to me. It's been 14.5 in every game this playoffs for Mobley, except for game one against Orlando. It was 13.5 and he had 16. Yet it's only 13.5 now. So I like Evan Mobley over 13.5 points. Points and rebounds is 24.5. He had 30 in game one against Boston, 27 in game seven against Orlando. And he had 27 in the first game without Allen. He had only 9 in that middle game limited, but he's had 27 or more in 3 of the 4 games, points and rebounds. That's 24.5. So, yeah, I like Evan Mobley over points, rebounds. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, Derek White, I think
one thing on Mobley.
Go ahead.
Sorry, one thing on Mobley is this. Allen is their traditional center. Mobley likes playing outside. But you look at what Mobley's had to do the last couple games with Allen out. He's had 16 rebounds and 13 rebounds. If you see that Allen's not playing, I would go Mobley over because they're forced to play him down inside. Even on the offensive, when he usually comes out and pick and they run screens off him and he sets picks, they keep him down lower much more. So they have to change their offense with Allen being out. And I think that affects multiple people. But if you don't see Allen, I would look for the Mobley rebound prop over the total.
Yes, I kind of agree with you. You both in that particular spot there. I am also seeing here. The big question is if you like Cleveland, Donovan Mitchell over 29.5 points is him going. There's no way you can fade Donovan Mitchell, Merril, right? I mean, it's if you're back in Cleveland to stay within 13.5, you better be throwing something on with Donovan Mitchell up and over as well.
Yeah, I like to take a contrarian view with the props, just as like I do in any handicap. And that we talk about. Ralph said the zigzag doesn't work on the blind. We all agree with that. I use the modified zigzag. That's a lot of times playing quality teams off a loss in a bounce back spot. But same thing with players. With these star players, I'm looking to pretty much only play them over. So when a guy's been going off like Mitchell, I just kind of sit on the sidelines and wait for maybe an off game. But definitely not looking to fade Mitchell, and especially since I lean Cleveland to have a better game tonight, he's going to have to be a large part of it.
Yeah, he is. He is going to have to be a big part of it. I think all of that is correlated, right, Ralph? I mean, if you're going to look at the Cavs in any way, shape, or form are covering, whether it be this game or any other game, I'm going to guess Donovan Mitchell's got to be a big part of your tickets then.
Well, again, as I said, without Allen, the whole offense changes. You look at the first 4 games against Orlando. Mitchell only took 30, 50. Mitchell took 71 shots. So 17 shots a game. The first three. The last three games, he's taken 36, 27, and 25. So again, without Allen, it totally changes that the responsibility falls on Mitchell to take more shots. So I clearly think that's the case. Plus, you see him driving the ball more, which there were some issues. I mean, game 5 against Orlando, he went to the free throw line 10 times, made 9. In the final game, game 7 against Orlando, he went to the free throw line 17 times and made 15. Yep. He will be driving the ball. Steve said that if Boston has an issue, it's with their guards. So Mitchell's going to have to drive, try to force foul trouble with Boston. So I do expect him to get to the free throw line quite a bit tonight.
There you go. Plenty of opportunities here to get involved tonight, guys. But it starts, of course, with partnering up, Ralph Michaels and Steve Merril. Ralph, tell them what you got locked, loaded, ready to roll here at WagerTalk.com for us.
Joe, number 1 in the NBA profits in the playoffs this year, a 15-3 playoff run. Folks, that's 83%. Woo. I've had 6 5% plays the last 7 weeks. I've gone a perfect 6-0. Number 7 is loaded for tomorrow. 3 NBA plays since March the 6th that have been 5% top-rated plays, a perfect 3-0. And remember, whether it's me or Steve, do not spend $35 on a 5% play. Our WagerTalk 7-11 special is still available. Instead of spending $35 on one selection, pay $64 more, and you're getting 11 full days of service. That's Ralph Michaels, WT.buzz/RM, the shortcut at WagerTalk.com.
Love it. Also seeing a lot of love. Rick J thinking, let's see, White's threes, maybe his over 3 prop as well might be a consideration. How about you, Merril? What do you got locked and loaded, ready to roll here today?
3 strong NBA best bets are ready. I've got some Friday games posted already as well. When you're a direct client, the minute I release games, you get them instantly. That's another reason, as Ralph said, to be a direct client. They're emailed to you instantly with the analysis, so you can lock in the best possible line. And the lines do move a lot in these games, so I highly recommend a direct subscription. If you want to try out my 3-for-1 NBA special, $25 per game, or get all 3 for $29. You're getting that second and third game for just $2 each. Probably the strongest and deepest card I'm going to have the rest of the playoffs. We only have 1 or 2 games total scheduled the rest of the way out. And I've got 3 strong best bets right now, a rare NBA 3-for-1 special, also a free baseball play, the late night game for Thursday, free on my page right now. Check out the free play every day. And also that buy 7, get 11 works out to just $9 a day for baseball and basketball combined. Steve Merril, WagerTalk.com. And don't forget, hit subscribe and hit the bell for instant alerts. My daily NBA playoff update is up for tonight. Deep dive into both of these games. I just recorded the Friday video as well. That'll be up nice and early for you. Hit subscribe, hit the bell, comment. We read all the comments and reply back here on Wager Talk TV.
All right. Love that. Also a lot of love here for, and it looks like Derek White getting a whole lot of love. Over his attempts, too, as well. 3-point attempts, 3 points made, and over 3+ threes. You can get Derek White over 3.5 and get some decent money on that as well. So there you got it here, guys. AOD, don't forget, Pistons in 5, says AOD. We appreciate that. Kelsey, by the way, in YouTube Shorts might have had the absolute quote of the day, saying how the Cleveland Cavaliers suck so bad, Boston will sweep them, and the series will be over in 3. I don't think they need a 4th game, and I agree. So after this ass whooping here tonight, maybe, just maybe, they'll throw the white towel in, and Donovan Mitchell, sooner rather than later, can get fitted for his Miami Heat uniform, which is where we all want him. Sorry, Ralph, but you know the Cavs. Nothing else. They're a hell of a farm system for Pat Riley and the Miami Heat. You guys rule. Thank you so very much. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up on the way out, guys. Best of luck with all those plays tonight. Cash those tickets. Come back and join us again tomorrow for the Friday edition of the NBA Tip-Off Show. Until then, enjoy it. Cash it, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.